All right, so I want to talk to you today about the MediaWiki expedition, um, what it is all about, and what it may mean for you. If I can, yeah. Okay, so as you may have noticed, MediaWiki has grown into a big ball of mud over the years where everything kind of depends on everything, which makes it really hard to understand, hard to change, and hard to fix, right? You change one small bit in one place, and it's really hard to predict what impact it will have on the rest of the system. And we really want to break things up more into components that are easy to understand, easier to reason about. We want to untangle the code. And eventually, perhaps we will even break out some bits and pieces into standalone services, but that's not clear yet. Mostly, we really want to have the ability to do this. Well, currently everything is bound together, and it's kind of impossible to move things around. So this is kind of a far off goal, but we have to start somewhere. And um, Peter came up with this picture of an expedition where you really know why you are doing it, you know where you want to get to, but you don't really know how to get there. So you just start walking in the rough direction, and you see what you encounter on the way, and you think on your feet and change plans when necessary. The very first step in this expedition is to break up some of the very, very big classes that tie everything together. Things that are not just used everywhere, but that also know about most of the system. Classes like the user class, the title class, wiki page, language, and a few others. So we want to replace these huge monster classes that are binding together the code into a monolith. We want to replace them with a lightweight vocabulary that can be used for communication between components. Yeah, and so we started to fight the monsters. I already tackled the revision class a couple of years ago when I worked on MCR, multi-content revisions. So that is mostly done. And now we are working on the user class, on the title class, and probably in the not too far future on the language class. We've made some pretty good progress, especially with respect to user. I made this little tool called the Monster Monitor that you can also use to see our progress, right? And the red and the yellow must come down, the green and the blue should go up. We've been working on this for a bit more than 3 months now, and we ran a few metrics the other day, and so it looks like we merged 360 patches in that time. We removed 70 no, 73% would be nice now, 37% of type hints for user from core, 12% already for title, and 25% for wiki page. So yeah, we already made some headway, but there's still a lot to do. And remember, this is only fighting these monsters is only the very first step on the larger expedition. So a very rough roadmap up front to give you an idea of the time frame. Introducing new core interfaces and deprecating old methods has been done in 1.36. In 1.37, we expect more method deprecations, and we will start to focus on introducing new hooks to replace old hooks that bind extensions to the old concepts. And in 1.38, we may already get to the point where we can actually deprecate the old classes, user and title, perhaps start to move out the old hook system altogether. So what is going to happen with these classes? The user class will be split into a user identity. which has already been around, but we revisited and refined a bit. An authority class that can be used to check whether let's say the user that is currently making a request is allowed to perform certain actions. And I'm hesitating here a little bit because what you can and cannot do on a wiki is not just dependent on the groups the user is in. It also depends on whether, for instance, the IP the user is coming in from is blocked, or whether the current session is actually bound to some OAuth grants that may be more restrictive than the permissions the user may have in general. Which is why we introduced this new concept to model this. And in the future, we will probably introduce the user account concept, which can be used when you actually want to access the user's email and so on. For the title class, which is what I'm currently focusing on, a long time ago already, we introduced the link target interface to use instead of title to represent things that you can link to from wiki text, which could also be an interwiki link or a relative section jump and stuff like that. And what we now introduced in 1.36 are 3 new interfaces: page reference, page identity, and page record. That's page record, not page record. Sorry about that. I guess I got carried away. Why are we all doing this? What's so bad about these big old classes? Well, I said that they're big. They tie together the code. They are used. Everything knows about them, and they know about everything. That's one part. But another part is that they are semantically very ill-defined. It's totally unclear what they represent. So, for instance, a title has a page ID if the page actually exists. It has a namespace unless it's an interwiki link. It has a page name unless it's a relative section jump. It has an associated talk page unless it's a special page, and so on. So there's really nothing that a title definitely has. And similarly, if you think about what you can do with the title, well, you can view the page that the title refers to, unless it's an interwiki link. You can watch a title, unless it's a relative section jump, because then there's nothing to watch. You can rename a page, rename a title, unless it's a special page, and so on. So you can't be sure what operations you can actually perform on a given title object. And this kind of unclear vocabulary results in a lot of ambiguity and a lot of confusion. And ambiguity and confusion lead to bugs and frustration. And that is what we want to fix. Okay, so how are we going about this? I would like to look at the title class a little bit more. It's a little bit more complicated here than with the user object. How do we get from A to B without breaking things? Without breaking things in production, but also without breaking things for third parties, breaking things for extensions. Our guarantees towards third parties, towards extension authors and other code that depends on MediaWiki as a framework is defined by the stable interface policy that has been around for, has it already been a couple of years? Since 2019. And to give a very, very brief summary is that calling things is generally fine and stable. Instantiating classes directly with a new operator is generally not safe and should only be done if the class is marked to be stable for instantiation. Similarly, only a few classes are safe to extend to subclass, and similarly, interfaces should only be implemented directly by extensions if they are marked to be safe for this purpose. And even if a class is stable to extend, it's still not safe to override all every and all methods, right? You should only be overriding methods that are marked to be safe for this purpose. These restrictions allow us, the core developers, some wiggle room to make these changes that that I just outlined. One thing that may be relevant for extension authors to keep in mind is that when we look for, when we try to decide how much impact a change has on extension developers, we rely on the code search tool, and the code search tool covers all code that resides in repositories hosted by Wikimedia, so on Wikimedia Garrett, but it covers all extensions that are listed in the non-WMF extensions repo, which is maintained by the MediaWiki stakeholders group. So if you have an extension that is hosted not on MediaWiki Garrett, but you want it to be visible to core developers when we investigate the impact of the changes we make, then make sure this is included in this GitHub repository. I think that GitHub repository is just, it's basically a list of sub repos, right, where you have all these extensions. So how can we make these breaking changes and refactorings without breaking extensions? There's a little dance that we came up with. And it goes like this. The old class will implement the new interface. Then we change method signatures to accept the new interface by widening the type of parameters. We replace methods that return the old type, and then we remove the old class. So to give a few examples for this, if I have a method like addWatch that takes a user and a title, I can widen the type of these parameters without breaking callers, right? If the user class implements user identity and the title class implements page reference, then I can just change these type hints without breaking anything for callers. If anything was actually overriding this method in a subclass, things explode, right? So if the method was marked to be stable to override, we actually have to introduce an entirely new method, deprecate the old one, move all the callers to the new method, which is more work, of course, which is one of the reasons to have a policy that only methods that are marked to be safe to override should be overridden. So if you have been overriding methods on classes that are not marked to be stable for that purpose, things may break for you when we make these changes. Similarly, of course, return types, right? A return type can be narrowed safely, but it cannot be widened safely. So we can't change a method that used to return the title object to now return a page identity. So instead, we have to deprecate the old method and introduce a new one. Yeah, so again, we are trying to replace the monster classes with new lightweight vocabulary without breaking things. What does that look like for extensions? So if in 1.35, your extension was implementing a hook handler that reacted to two hooks, for instance, and both these hooks would get a title object. And then this title object would be used and to call back to some service object or some utility class in MediaWiki core. Then in 1.36, we would have changed the methods, the signatures of the methods in core to also accept the new type. but you don't have to worry because the types are compatible, right? You can still just use the you can still just use the objects you got in the hook handler functions and pass them back to MediaWiki core, and things will be fine. I use these triangles, by the way, to indicate whether the method receives a title object or returns a title object. We have one instance here. Too bad I can't. Can you see when I point with the mouse? I hope so. So we have one instance here where a title object is returned, and in that instance, a new method was created. Oh yeah, excellent. So the next step for hooks is to introduce new hooks that no longer expose the old types, but expose the new type. And eventually then, sometime in perhaps 1.38, we would hope that extensions stop using the old hooks that expose the old types and use new hooks that use the new types. These triangles went the wrong way. Huh. And yeah, so over the course of, let's see, 1, 2, 3 releases, we should be able to completely replace the old types with the new types in a way that is safe for extensions and doesn't break anything. I want to take a little bit of a closer look to how this works in the type system for the title class, but I can't see how are we doing on time? I've been talking for quite a bit already. I will go through this quickly. Please, if you have questions, please write them in the chat or let Brian know, and we will get to them in a minute. So the 3 replacements for the title class, page reference, page identity, and page record, form a hierarchy of interfaces, and there is a corresponding hierarchy of concrete implementations. However, we want to make title and wiki page compatible to the new interfaces. So title should implement page identity, and wiki page should implement page record. However, title doesn't actually provide the guarantees that a page identity should provide, right? A title may represent a relative section link. That's not a page identity. And if you try to use it like a page identity, for instance, ask it for the page ID, it will throw. So to work around this problem, we introduced additional interfaces that actually have the proper guarantee, right? So you have the page identity, which is should have the guarantee but doesn't yet. And you have the proper page identity that actually guarantees this to be a usable page identity. Similarly, page record should only represent pages that actually already exist, but currently we can't guarantee that because we have to be compatible with the old wiki page class. So there's an existing page record. And once all code has been migrated away from relying on the old type hierarchy again. So again, the rough roadmap in 1.36, we introduce new things in core. In 1.37, we look at hooks and introduce new hooks, deprecate old hooks. In 1.38, we hope to be deprecating at least some of the old monsters. And this is only the start of the expedition, right? Slaying the monsters, allows us to start breaking things up. It's not the end of breaking things up. This is going to be quite a bit of work, and we will be busy working on it for, well, a year or two, I suppose. And there are some changes ahead, but for the better, I hope. So bear with us. Couldn't resist the silly dad joke in the end. As a father of 3, I guess that's obligatory. If you have any questions, please let me know. That's it for now. I am okay.
Daniel, there's 2 questions right now in the backstage chat. If you want to read them out, if they make sense, and answer them.
Okay, so the first question is whether we could use the facade pattern. Since where we can use it, we have been trying to do so, but the problem is, and well, okay, let me say, when we are pulling functionality, for instance, out of title, and we are moving that functionality into a service object that is available via the service container, we keep that functionality available via the old interface. And similarly, we have been introducing new interfaces like the authority interface backed by old code for now. So where it is possible, we do make use of this. But if you have something like, the problem with the title object really is that it exposes so many different things that you have to find a way to make code expect less, to take more narrow interfaces. And I don't really see how the facade pattern by itself covers that. I hope that answers the question, but I'm happy to discuss it in more depth later. The rollout being handled internally, the rollout is just it's just a regular deployment, the regular weekly deployment we do for everything. So all the changes that we make have to work with all the code we have deployed. It have to be compatible with everything we have live always. So the repo is always in a deployable state.
There's one more question in the comments here. Are the plan changes documented somewhere?
Yes, but not nicely. So there are a number of documents that outline what we are trying to do. There's a number of tickets. There's a board that we use to organize our work. There is no nice, fully worked out long-term plan, which I think is kind of the nature of the expedition, right? There are no detailed long-term plans. There's only detailed short-term plans, which is which you can find in the various tickets. I can link to the board as an entry point if you like, but it's, yeah. I guess this presentation is as good as an overview that so far exists.
Oh, and I'll just read Peter's comment, but this is an expedition. We know there's an end, but we do not know what that will be exactly. And yeah. Cindy pasted the work board fabricator. Oh, okay.
I'm getting confused between the backstage chat and the stage chat. That's a little bit confusing.
Yeah, sorry. I think that might be it, though, for the questions. So thank you for your talk, Daniel. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all.